go. Welcome to Lion and Zion, unfiltered, unapologetic, untamed. Today, we're going to have a conversation about the U.S. Israel alliance. We're going to also talk about some few items around the Jew hate of our day, the anti Semitism of our age. So let's get into it. What do we hear a lot about? We hear a lot about how Israel is a client state, essentially. That a lot of the American, I would say, reclusive right or recluse right or woke right, some people are calling. I don't like that because it conflates it with the left. And I think it's two separate camps. Both are anti Israel in their own way for different reasons. We'll touch on it a little bit, but it's the isolationist right that really is irking me, and that I want to respond to because I expect it from the woke left, the intersectional, white colonizer, neo-Marxist sort of everything can be reduced and simplified to power, and you have oppressor and oppressed. And it's not about justice. It's not about truth. It's just oppressor and oppressed. And in that situation, an ethnocentric kind of particular Zionist Jewish state would for sure irk them. So it's to be expected. They have a revolutionary globalist worldview. The reclusive right or the neo Lindberghs or Lindbergh 2.0s, isolationist, non-interventionist folk, it's more of a tactic for them. They want to decouple from any kind of relationships that push them to outside their continental interests or domestic interests. And Israel obviously sits on top of that pyramid. So for them, dual loyalty, the APAC stuff, the conspiratorial stuff, that's kind of suits their agenda, and it's a means to be able to sort of decouple American alliance and friendship to Israel. So what do we hear a lot about? We hear a lot about, and I hear this from the Dave Smiths and the Tucker Carlsons and the John Mearsheimers and all that lot. That the reason that they're at such a, how should I put it? So gobsmacked. They're so vociferously opposed to what's going on with Israel fighting the jihadi death cult empire builders in Gaza and in Lebanon, on Syrian borders in Iraq and Iran, is that they're paying for it. They're funding it. So that kind of gives them skin in the game. I'm not going to argue that point. I will say that they create an oversimplified version of what this alliance is and what it's been able to do for America. But the whole idea of the conspiracies, that's something around it, how they're being manipulated by an agenda. Of course, the idea of a Jewish agenda. We've seen that for centuries and centuries, whether it's Candace Owens Frankists creating a pedophile state, or you have the international financiers, blackmailing, like a Jeffrey Epstein now, who's somehow in the pocket of Mossad, even though there's no actual evidence of such a case, but we're all certain of it. To the Dulles brothers being sort of blackmailed into their support of Israel. This is something separate. This is just, again, this is like that Ian Carroll taking circumstantial evidence and then tying it together into some crazy design. It's like, I see pie in everything. I see a pattern in everything, and there's not much you can do because they're taking tangential, points and saying they're all map up together. They all line up together, and the only way to steel man that is to provide counter, circumstantial evidence that could lead you to different conspiracy theories. Why this one? A perfect example is the USS Liberty. Israel admitted its mistake. It paid restitution for it, but it's not enough. These guys, who have been pouncing on this for the last couple of months, this is some part of some grand design, some part of Israel's, agenda to manhandle the relationship. Why the counterpoint could be, why is there a spy ship in a hot kinetic zone, war zone, in and not declaring itself? Why would they be there? They're spying, obviously. Maybe they were spying for the Arabs. Maybe they were sending signals intelligence to Egypt and to Syria in a time of war. Why couldn't that be the case? They weren't. America and Israel weren't strategic allies at that point in '67 and before. Why shouldn't we go into that direction? I'm not saying it did. That's not the point. The point is that if you want to take a conspiracy, let's throw it in 20 different directions and see what sticks. I just love the idea because America like bombed the Chinese embassy in Kosovo like in like 1998. They bombed in an embassy. And they're like, sorry, that was an upthief. So mistakes happen. Is the point. But to the idea of the alliance, we that's what we're hearing. Like, what's the point of this alliance? Here's the point of the alliance, and I'll give it to you in sort of broad strokes. Israel is a democracy. It believes in the rule of law. It's a high tech, capital. It has a cultural affinity with the West. I don't say it's a Western culture country because it's not, but it does have a cultural affinity with the West. And so it sits as a bellwether one of what's going on in the region, a canary in the coal mine. It also sits as a front line to forces that would inevitably want to go into Europe and then America, or vice versa, America and then Europe. So Israel sits as a front line. First, you'd want to take care of that before the region, before you'd start going to another continent. So Israel sits as a sort of a splinter in that whole idea of unifying the region. And three, Israel never asks for boots on the ground. We don't want America to be fighting our wars for them, nor have they ever. So instead of having America having to send its troops to every shifting sand in the Middle East when there's a problem, a lot of time Israel is used to create some stabilizing force. Often you hear that it's like the American aircraft carrier in the region. Israel also does a lot of America's bidding in the first Iraq War. It was getting attacked by Saddam Hussein. America said, don't respond. You're going to have 30, 40 missiles landing on your cities, but don't respond. And Israel listened. So you have something of a pliant sort of alliance that you don't actually get from a lot of other alliances. Israel's a lot of the time willing to come to accords with American interests and needs in the region. I just gave you a perfect example of one. Also, we provide intelligence. Mossad is one of the premier intelligence services in the world, and we don't even know, but how much collaboration and help Israel has provided over the ages. What we do know is that the Mossad is no small little, run-of-the-mill kind of clandestine organization. We know that Israel also has battle doctrines that are getting tested, weapon systems that get tested in real time due to very active borders. So, for instance, the first country to ever employ UAVs was Israel. The first country to be able to provide America with a full, MiG-21 was Israel I think it was in the 50s or 60s. We also have satellite. We can launch our own satellites. One of 9 or 10 countries that can launch our own satellites. So space technology as well. I was going to get into that. Technology transfers as well, from ways to, a pill that you can swallow instead of putting some proctology prod up your ass, to Pentium processing chips, to mobile technologies, to, all sorts. So just so you know, like a lot of the technologies that are in the F-35 helmet were developed and invented in Israel and produced in Israel. So there's technology transfer, there's battle doctrine testing, counter-terrorist consultation. Post 9/11, the Israelis were the first people that Homeland Security, or the newly found Homeland Security, called. So there is a lot of value in the relationship itself. Now, as far as Israel taking the $3.8 billion a year that we're taking, I'm against this. I think it's a transactional paycheck relationship. We're beyond that. Maybe it might have worked, been a good thing in the early part of Israel's history. But I think for the last 20, 30 years, we could have gone on our own. We don't need that money. I think we, I think it helps America more than it helps Israel. And why do I say that? Well, if you look at the progress of when these dollar amounts were given, and how they sort of got to the level they were, it goes in very much hand in hand with a lot of the diplomatic movement and arrangements and agreements that Israel was making post 67, which is when we see Israel and America's alliance actually start to take real shape. Post pre 67, it was Israel with the French mainly and some British in its alliance structure. Post 67, then we start moving towards an American centric alliance. And what we see is that when we pulled out of the Sinai and made deals with Egypt, we start seeing money and security guarantees. When we pull out of Lebanon, we start seeing money and security guarantees. When we made deals with Jordan, again, security guarantees. When we did Oslo and Madrid and Taba and all that, money and security agreements. So Israel's trading actual strategic assets for aid and security guarantees. It didn't just come out of nowhere. America offered a carrot, and Israel took it. Now, looking back on a post October 7th, all these withdrawals, who filled these vacuums, probably wasn't a good idea, was it? But it sort of fit within the whole Ben Gurion strategy of never going to war without a major power behind you. Funnily enough, he didn't follow his own dictum when he declared statehood in 1948. Actually, American state officials told him he'd be alone, very much alone, but he still declared statehood. And that's why he was also against preemption in 67, because there was no major state that would back Israel. But we still defeated all the Israeli Arabs and became a regional hegemon in 6 days. In 73, Golda Meir didn't follow Charet's example, and she didn't do a preemptive strike, and we see what happens. We actually got a huge hit in 73 from Syria and Egypt. And only on the 8th day of the war did we start seeing supplies coming in from America, and which we probably wouldn't have needed if we did a preemptive strike. And a lot of people talk about that airlift, and thankful for it, of course, but it only came in parallel with the Russians in a Cold War, who was arming up their Arab satellites. So it was not just giving to Israel, but it was also a Cold War move where one side's getting arms, the other side's going to get arms. Fast forward to post October 7th, I don't think Israel should be following this Ben Gurion line. I think we are capable of being able to support ourselves. And I think the kind of alliance Israel should be embarking with America is a square deal. We get into a manufacturing industrialization partnerships, building platforms of immense impact and strategic impact and havoc on the battlefield. And that's the stuff we should build. I would start personally with, underwater drone warfare, mine warfare, and start building these platforms together. But it should go into space. Trump wants to build a Golden Dome. Israel has the only operational anti-ballistic missile systems, multi-layered systems. Now the Iron Beam laser anti-missile systems are coming aboard. We should be working with Americans and building these things together. So I want industrial relationships. I want industrial partnerships, square deal kind of stuff. And that kind of takes the legs out of these, these Lindbergh 2.0 isolationists. And make it very clear the mutual benefit in the relationship, which they seem to not be able to see in the current alliance. Moving forward, just in regards to some of the anti-Semitism of our day that we're dealing with, we're starting to see that you having personalities coming podcasting of Israel's sort of APAC and agenda. And all I have to say to that, the APAC stuff and the Mossad stuff, is you can take these kinds of circumstantial, like, points and tie them all together and make some grand design strategy to everything. But there's no country, and you just take opinion polls, that has more appeal or public appeal than Israel for America. There's a real affinity. There's a real love Israelis have for America, and it's a relationship that could be so much more powerful if the alliance was put together properly, and not currently how it's done, where it's about restraining Israel instead of letting Israel lead. And I just see that a lot of these actors want to hurt America, like by hurting this alliance. It's not in America's interest to close the door on the only democracy in the region, one who has a lot of goodwill in their streets and in their towns and their cities, and who's building the cool shit that everybody wants and fighting wars that nobody's willing to have with jihadi empire builders and killing people who kill Americans. And it's very important that whoever is willing to listen to this, that they don't hate you because you're friends with Israel. They hate you because you're free. They hate you because you give the dignity of the individual. They hate you because you give rights to women and independence and a vote to women. They hate you because you believe that there's an idea of the right of property and private property, and that the right that the governed needs to have the consent of the people. These are the things that they hate. Okay, that, and the fact that they want to have you become a theocratic jihadi, Sharia state. So, that being said, I just wanted to share some of those pearls with you, and hopefully you get something from it. Till next time.